Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you that will help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. And today's video is something a little bit different. I'm starting a series of recovery stories where I invite people on to talk about their recovery from binge eating. I think there's so much that we can learn from each other about how other people have found freedom and managed to stop binging. So today I'm joined by Becca Robinson. I found Becca on Instagram. She has recently started up her recovery account, or recovered account, perhaps I should say. And she's at Binge Free and Beautiful on Instagram. So go check out her page. She's got some brilliant content, and a lot of what she says is so on point and I think will resonate with a lot of you. So we dive into her story and she talks about what really helped her become free from binge eating. So without further ado, here's the interview. I hope you enjoy it. Well, hi Becca.
Hiya.
Thanks so much for joining me today, and thanks for agreeing to come and talk to me and be the first recovery story on my YouTube channel.
Well, it's exciting. Thank you for having me here as well and taking the time to speak to me.
No worries at all. So I recently discovered you on Instagram, but I think the reason I recently discovered you is because you've only very recently started a recovery account on Instagram. Is that right?
Yes, it is. Yeah. I was kind of spurred on by the COVID-19 situation to do it because I thought I was thinking of all the other people who are probably stuck in isolation and struggling, and I was thinking if I was still where I was a few years ago in this situation, it would be very difficult, and I wanted to sort of try and help people further. So that's where it came from.
That's really interesting, actually, that was your trigger, as I didn't realise that. And since the
Yeah.
whole COVID-19, a lot of my posts and videos, I've been self-disclosing more than I ever did before. And for that exact reason, I just think so many people must be feeling particularly alone.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lonely experience anyway, going through binge eating or any form of eating disorder. But to be in isolation at the same time, yeah, my heart
Yeah.
goes out to people.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, I appreciate your journey has probably been quite a long one, and we'll only be able to really scratch the surface. But maybe you would be willing to tell us a little bit about your experience of binge eating, like how long it went on for and how it developed for you.
Yeah. So I first struggled with binge eating, bulimia, from around the age of 16. So obviously at that stage in your life, you're already quite heightened to the changes that your body's going through. It's a bit of a confusing time. But around the age of 16, my parents went through a divorce, and that was the sort of the stress that kind of triggered me into bulimia. So it originally started as bulimia, and that continued for a couple of years. And then around the age of 19, I experienced sexual abuse. And that was really when the eating disorder kind of took full hold of me. It was at its worst then. And I think it was kind of my way of dealing with the emotions or feelings that I had and I couldn't kind of face or make any sense of. It was my escapism in a way, and also it was my way of controlling things that were going on around me. So it started off as bulimia, then the purging stopped after about 5 years, and then but the binge eating continued for probably another 5 years. So for about 10 years of my life, it was something that I did struggle with. In regards to sort of why I turned to food, that's something I questioned for quite a while, and it was only through really doing like hypnotherapy and doing quite a bit of regression work that I regressed back to some times in my childhood and growing up when I did witness disordered eating from significant people in my life. Not that they had eating disorders, but some unhealthy behaviours around food. And I think that sort of planted a seed in my mind that when things became too much for me in my teenage years, that I kind of turned to eating and food as a coping mechanism, basically.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what you describe, I think quite a few people could relate to. You said like with the bulimia, the purging stopped. Some people who watch this have had experience of purging, some people never have. So how for you did it end up going away, or how did you manage to stop the purging part of it?
The purging mainly stopped after I had hypnotherapy. It was quite a significant change after having hypnotherapy to the purging. But I think also the purging kind of stopped for me because I got to the point where the physical act of actually purging was too painful, and it no longer gave me that release that it did at one point. At one point, I did associate the purging with release, and it was in a weird way a positive sensation, but that stopped. The positive feeling from it went, and then it was just the pain and how uncomfortable it was physically to actually purge, and that stopped. But then the binging remained because I still hadn't really dealt with the emotional aspect of it on a deeper level, really.
And I think the idea of hypnotherapy is a really interesting one, because hypnotherapy can be quite controversial in some ways. And I know certainly a lot of my therapist colleagues would wince at the idea. And I had hypnotherapy right towards the beginning of my eating struggles. Yeah. And I had it again maybe a couple of years later. And my experience of hypnotherapy was always that it would help for a couple of weeks. And then it just didn't seem to work after that. But it sounds like it was much more effective for you.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I've had quite a few different types of therapy. Counselling was the first sort of therapy I went through. That was very, very helpful in healing the emotions I had in regards to the sexual abuse I experienced. So it helped in that aspect, but it didn't really help with the eating disorder itself. Then I had CBD therapy, which is very known for being like the go-to therapy for people with eating disorders. That one actually didn't help me at all, really. It helped me probably the least. Not saying it wouldn't work for some people, but for me it didn't. And with the hypnotherapy, I actually got to I was a bit skeptical myself as well, but I got to the point where I thought, I've tried this, I've tried that, what else can I do? And so I went for it, and it actually had a really significant impact on my healing journey. It kind of opened up other ideas as well, in regards to healing.
Yeah, I think it sounds really enticing, because I think it can sometimes be thought of as a quick fix, but it sounds like there was a lot of other stuff, a lot of other work, personal work that you did to get to where you are.
Well, hypnotherapy for me, it opened up my mind to like the subconscious aspects that I hadn't worked on before. So then it made me look into things like meditation and mindfulness, and that was the thing that made the big change for me, actually, was taking that self-control and focusing on mindfulness. So I initially started with meditation, which was designed to help people who do have issues with eating disorders, and it really did help. But then I became very fascinated with these aspects of my mind that I was very unaware of or unconscious of at one point. So then it opened up this whole discovery of spirituality and philosophy, and it just sent me on a journey of self-discovery, which then changed my perspective of trying to heal from bulimia or binge eating in particular at that point. It changed me from thinking I need to stop doing this because I know it's wrong, to I want to stop doing this as an act of self-love. So that mind shift was a huge thing for me in recovery.
Was there a turning point? But was there a turning point for you? So you've been struggling for a while. At what point did things start to head in a more positive direction?
I think there was not one specific moment, but I just got to the point where I was so sick and tired of myself, really, and sick of this issue, the binge eating, just coming in, taking control of my mind and ruining friendships I had with people and relationships, making me an angry person, making me selfish, kind of making me deceitful as well, and just holding me back from truly experiencing life fully, and actually from doing things that I wanted to do but I never did, because I was always so lost in this bubble of how I looked and what I ate, and I just got sick of it and thought, I actually want to live my life instead of being controlled by this. And that spurred me on to really do something myself about it.
Mm-hmm. So where did you start? Like for you, and you said that you were spurred on to do something yourself. What was that first step that you did for yourself?
For myself, I went on YouTube and found a sort of a 30-day, I think it was a 30-day or however long, meditation course to help you in regards to overeating and binge eating and just all types of unhealthy relationships with food. And I don't think that specifically healed anything in regards to the binge eating, but it made me learn to sort of sit down with my thoughts and actually face these thoughts and feelings I had in regards to my body, in regards to food, and made me be more self-aware. And then from that, I branched out into doing different types of meditations to help me with my mind. And then that led on to different sort of acts of self-work. I went online, found different resources that I could do, and just spent a little bit of time every single morning working through them. So that was the catalyst, really, the meditation, and then it led on.
How do you think meditation helps with something like binge eating?
I think for me, anyway, binge eating was a way of not feeling my feelings. So whenever I became stressed or upset or overwhelmed by emotions in any way, my go-to was to eat. And that actually doesn't allow you to really address the emotions that you're feeling. It just covers them up, it masks them, because you eat, and then you pass out or you fall asleep. It's a distraction, basically. And meditation made me learn how to actually sit and feel certain things and not attach to them. Because obviously in meditation, it's a lot about, this is a thought, it's not the truth. And you kind of see these thoughts or feelings, but you don't become consumed by them. You learn how to give them space, but not too much. And it taught me how to do that with my emotions as well. So I didn't feel this desire to binge as much, because I was actually addressing how I was feeling, not just masking it.
100%. And one of the things that I love about meditation or those kind of mindful practices is I think it really helps develop that ability to watch our own minds.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can watch ourselves, we're not completely in it, we're not completely believing it. So the part of our brain that might be telling us like everything that's wrong with our bodies, or we shouldn't have had that, or we're feeling guilty.
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, it wasn't like mindfulness didn't make that stuff go away, but it made me be able to look at it and just sort of name it. So I slightly separated the me who could see myself having the experience and me having the experience. I don't know if that resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. It did. It made me be more aware of myself, be able to kind of take a step back and look at my behavior, or look at my feelings, without feeling that I am that behavior or I am that feeling, because you're not that. And I think that's a big thing for me with binge eating. For a long time, I just identified as a binge eater. That was who I was. It was my whole identity. So kind of moving away from it is a scary thing, because you're moving into the unknown, and you go through a whole self-identity crisis of who am I, because you're leaving the binge eater behind. But it's actually very liberating as well at the same time. Scary but liberating.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that shift in identity just really speaks to the way that I think about recovery. And for you, that change in identity, was there a point for you when you thought, I no longer identify as being a binge eater, I'm now recovered?
I think the way I started talking about my eating behavior really was what made me notice I had had an identity shift. Because when I was lost in the binge eating, I would talk in the first person, like, I do this, I do that. Then when I moved away from being a binge eater, I would refer to it as like the binge eating like kind of comes in and takes over, or I can feel it wanting to do that. And that was what made me realize, actually, you're not identifying as the eating disorder anymore. You're identifying as a person who has these issues, but they are able to work through them. I hope that makes sense, but it was the way I talked about it that made me realize.
Mm-hmm. So potentially quite gradual.
Yeah, it was a very gradual process, definitely.
Yeah.
And I think recovery is a gradual process. It takes lots of hours of self-work, lots of different sort of approaches and techniques. I don't think there is really one thing that can help you. I mean, I say hypnotherapy helped me a lot, but would hypnotherapy have helped me as much as it did if I hadn't been through the counselling and the CBT? I don't know. I think it is honestly a combination of lots of different aspects.
Yeah. And also, I 100% agree about recovery, and it's such a gradual process. And sometimes you'll feel recovered, and sometimes you won't feel recovered.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really hard particularly for people who struggle with binge eating, who tend to be quite black and white in the way that we think.
That was me.
Same here.
So much.
Yeah, and that's why I think some kind of like the mindfulness practice, and I know the word mindfulness and meditation, I think, has been like hijacked and has so many different meanings. So I use the word presence a lot.
Yeah.
The idea of being present with ourselves, spending a bit of time with ourselves, because if we can tolerate that, the urge to escape with food would reduce.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because I think I was always somebody who was always with other people. I was never ever alone. And I thought I was like the most extrovert person out there. And actually the recovery of healing from binge eating has shown me that I'm actually a lot more of an introvert person than I realized. And
it resonates so much. So much.
And in particular, this experience now with lockdown has made me even more realize, actually, you're very much an introvert. It's not too bad being on your own. But at the start, because I thought I was such an extrovert person and I avoided feeling and being on my own so much, when I tried to meditate, or when I tried to say, okay, I'm going to just spend an evening to myself, just me, and I'm not going to binge, I didn't know what to do with myself. I actually just did not know what to do, because the only thing I ever did when I was on my own was either binge eat or exercise, to be honest. Mm-hmm. So to do anything else other than those two things on my own was very scary, and at the start really horrible, because I had to realize how much I really disliked myself. But it was only through doing that I could then actually learn to love myself and learn, like, pick up different hobbies and interests. And I feel like it's really helped me discover who I actually am on a deeper level, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So what would you do now, for example, if you're not going to binge? Mm-hmm. What do you do now with that extra time and headspace? Because a lot of the time I say to people, mm-hmm. Okay, if you weren't thinking about food all the time, what would you be thinking about? So mm-hmm. I suppose I'm going to throw that question at you. Like, what do you think about?
It's hard. Like, I think about so many different things now. I mean, initially at the start, it was to try and actually do things. So instead of just being sat, let's try and do something. So, for example, I have hobbies like, I like going out for walks in nature. I really love being around nature. I also make jewelry. That's a big hobby of mine. I got into reading. Now I read books which are more around psychology. But at the start, I read a lot of novels just so I could kind of get into a new world and sort of explore that. and I think it was just forcing myself to do something different other than binge at the start. And then once I got a bit more used to doing different things other than binging when I was on my own, then I was able to learn about myself a bit more. It's kind of like it happens subconsciously. I didn't think I'm gonna spend time on my own, I'm not gonna binge, and I'm gonna learn about myself. But by doing different things, I did learn about myself.
Yeah. So maybe we could talk a little bit about your journey with body image
Mm-hmm.
and kind of what your body image was like when you were binge eating, what's shifted, what are the challenges?
So my body image was really, really bad. I was never underweight and I was never overweight, as by sort of the typical NHS standards, never underweight or overweight. But I had a very poor body image. I don't know, I was never diagnosed as having body dysmorphia, but looking at it now, I definitely think I did, because I always thought I was a lot bigger than I was. And body image is something that even now I still have my moments with, and it's something I still do struggle with to a certain extent. As much as like the binge eating and the bulimia is completely gone, the body image is something that I still does require a bit of work on, because I think that issue goes deep. For me, a lot of my life was people often referred to me based on how I looked and my body, and that was their go-to thing to comment on me from a very young age. So that then makes you very super critical of your body and very aware of your body, but in an unhealthy way. Like, and it is something that has to be worked on gradually. But I think through having all these different hobbies and starting to do things like my jewelry, reading, spending more time in nature, just developing hobbies and interests helped me with my perception of my body image, because it gave me something else to focus on, and it gave me some kind of other sense of self-worth, because for so long of my life the only thing I put my self-worth on was how I looked. And then this, for example, making jewelry for me was, oh my god, I've actually created this, I've made this. So that was praising myself and recognizing myself for a skill instead of actually anything to do with how I look. And that really helped with the body image side of it.
And you shared a really lovely post on your Instagram this week where you were talking about body image and you saw yourself on a video. Do you want to just tell us about that?
So I saw myself on a video. Me and my partner were just messing around at home doing a daft video, and we watched it back, and my initial thought was like, oh my lord, your belly looks huge in that picture. And so I took myself away. I thought, I am not going to go down this route, because I could literally feel, I describe it as something that just comes in and kind of takes over. It's like a dark shadow that comes in, and I could feel it wanting to come into my mind and just take over. And I thought, no, you are not doing this. This is not happening today. So when I stepped away and actually went up into my room and just took all these daft pictures of myself posing at different angles where my belly looked different in all these different angles. And it made me realize that how you think you look, whether you think you look huge, it's all in your mind, because your body is like, one angle, it might be more flattering by standard beauty standards, and other ones maybe it's not so much, but it's still the same body. So the perceptions and beliefs you have on how it looks is just a thought, and we aren't our thoughts. And it also made me start to think about when I was growing up, my gran used to always say to us, to me and my brothers, beauty's in the eye of the beholder. And as a youngster, I didn't really understand that fully. And as I've grown older, actually that statement's really beautiful, because it shows you that if beauty's in the eye of the beholder, every single person has a different preference of what they think is beautiful or attractive. So if everybody can think different things, then that shows that it is personal opinion. It's a thought. So there is no one size fits all beauty standard, because that just doesn't work. And that really, I try and remember that now, because that really helps me remember that it is all just thoughts, it's not truth. That's it.
And that's one of those phrases, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, that I've heard. It's such an old phrase that it's lost all meaning for me until you said it then. I think the meaning of it really struck me at a deeper level for the first time, actually. And I think that idea that we can look so different even to ourselves day to day. And we know our bodies can't be changing that much, but one day we look bigger and another day we look smaller. And there's something extraordinary about how we experience these bodies. And I guess thoughts are going to come up about that.
Yeah, they do. The thoughts will come up, because when these thoughts are something you've had for so long, you know, they will reoccur. It's learning how to manage them when they do appear. That's the key thing. And another thing that I found quite helpful, which again may or may not work for everyone, is I actually look back at pictures of myself from years and years previously and thought, in every single one of the pictures I looked at that moment when that picture was taken, I thought I was fat. And now I look back at it and go, well, why on earth did you think that? Like, I cringe sometimes at some of the thoughts I had about my body in those moments. And that's a running theme with all these pictures of myself from the past. So now when I have any of these thoughts, I think just ignore them, because probably if you let yourself become consumed by this thought you're having right now in this moment, in a couple of years' time, you would look back at how you look now and think, why on earth did you think that? So it's kind of helps in a way to do that.
100%. So I think, well, the last thing I would like to ask you is, like, let's say someone's watching this and they're looking at you and I having this conversation and thinking, well, it's all right for them, they're not struggling with this anymore, I'm completely stuck and lost. What would you say to someone who at the moment was just in that turmoil of binge eating?
It's a horrible place to be, and I can understand looking at people like myself and you and thinking, oh, I'll never be there, because I used to be one of those people that thought that. But I would just say, don't give up on your journey, because you are worthy of recovery, like every single person is. And don't stop trying different things, because if I look back at my journey, I tried so many different things to help me, and every single one of them healed a different aspect, a different issue, because eating disorders are very multidimensional, and different techniques and therapies will help different things. So what really works for one person might not work for you, it might not resonate with you, but another thing might do. So it's keep trying, keep exploring, and don't give up. And also be patient, because it does sound like such a cliche when people say recovery isn't linear, but it isn't. Like, there were so many times I thought I had made so much progress, and then I'd have a dip and I'd think, oh, that's it, like it's all been useless, I haven't made any progress at all. But you are making progress. It's just, you're going to have ups and downs on that journey. So when you have a down, don't be too harsh on yourself, because you will have an up afterwards. And it is, no matter how small the little successes are, I would say celebrate them, because that's really key to keeping you motivated and keeping you aware of actually how much you are progressing. And all these small little wins do add up over time and make a very big difference in the grand scheme of things.
That's beautifully put. Thank you so much for doing this, Becca.
Thank you for having me.
You've expressed your story beautifully, and I'm sure that a lot of people will really resonate with it. So
thank you.
Thank
you for having me, and I really hope that, you know, I can help other people, because there is light at the end of the tunnel, trust me.
There is. I can vouch for that too. But yeah, okay, well, thank you, Becca.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye-bye.